Hello, wonderful students. This is the Integrated 1 Spring Reassessment Day Review. We're going to be going over a couple of standards, so please follow along and check your work, making sure that we have the same answers as each other. And remember, if I make any mistakes, please bear with me. Even teachers make mistakes. So here we go. Our first standard is 6C. It says you are running a concession stand at a basketball game. You're selling hot dogs and sodas. Each hot dog costs $1.50. $1.50 per hot dog, and each soda costs 50 cents. At the end of the night, you made a total of $78.50. This first equation has us create an equation based on the prices of each item. Now next up, it does say that we can create another type of equation. Because to do a system of equations, we need two equations. At least two. So it says you sold a total of 87 hot dogs and sodas combined. So that means the number of hot dogs plus the number of sodas was 87. Now we have many ways that we can solve this system of equation. Remember, one of the ways we can solve it is by substitution. We can use the equal values method, and we can also use the last method, which is elimination. So for this first example, I think I'm going to use elimination because these numbers are already written in standard form. So that means I can go ahead and eliminate a variable. Alternatively, you could use substitution if you have an equation solved for a variable. So notice how I have h plus s equals 87. I could just go ahead and subtract s and have an equation solved for h. For example, this would be 87 minus s, and then I would substitute that in to h, and I would be able to get my answer for s. But for this first problem, I'm going to use elimination. So for elimination, I'm going to try to eliminate one of these variables. So I want one of these variables to be the same. So notice how I have 150h and h. I have 50 cents s and 1s. I want these variables to be exactly the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the top by 2. What that will do is it'll allow me to have both of these equations with s equal to each other. So watch this. When I multiply the top by 2, that's going to give me 3h, 2 times 150h, plus 1s, when I multiply by 2, 2 times a half is 1s, and 78.5 times 2.
It's 157.
Remember, we have to multiply each term by that value. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this equation, perhaps underneath it, and I will go ahead and subtract these two equations. When I subtract the two equations, we get 3h minus h is 2h. 1s minus s is no s. And 157 minus 87
The answer is 70.
is 70. So notice I just subtracted these two equations, I combined them, and I got myself 2h equals 70. What I'll do next is I will solve for h by dividing both sides by 2. That gives me h equals 35. Now, how wonderful, this means that we have sold 35 hot dogs. Now, how many sodas did we sell? If we sold 35 hot dogs, how many sodas did we sell? What I can do now is I will substitute this into either of these two equations. Now, which equation looks easier to you? The first equation, 150h plus 50 cents h equals 78.50, or the second equation where it's just h plus s equals 87. If you said h plus s equals 87, I think that you're making the right choice. If we substitute 35 in for h, we're going to get our answer for s right away. So subtracting 35, we get s equals, what is 87 minus 35?
It's 52.
52. So our final answer is 35 hot dogs and 52 sodas. Now you can confirm that those two numbers do add up to 87, which it does say right there. And you can also check your work by plugging them in or substituting them both in to see if you made the right sales or chose the right amount of hot dogs and sodas. But since I've already checked this work, the answer is 35 hot dogs and 52 sodas. Okay, next up is problem number 2. Problem number 2 says, all 231 students in the French class went on a field trip. Some students rode in vans, which hold 7 students each, 7 per van, and some students rode in buses, which hold 25 students each. So I know that's 25 per bus. For a total of 231 students. So that's our first equation. The second equation is dealing with the fact that it says, how many of each type of vehicle did they use if there were 15 vehicles total? So the number of vans plus buses was 15. Okay, now this system of equations is very similar to the past one where we did elimination. We could also have used substitution. And for this one, I'm going to also use elimination. Now, you can decide which variable you'd like to get rid of. If you'd like to eliminate the v, you just multiply this by 7. If you want to multiply, or if you want to get rid of b, then you'd multiply by 25. So to make things simpler for myself, I'm going to just multiply the bottom equation by 7, since it's smaller numbers. What that gives me is, let's multiply every single term by 7. That gives me 7v plus 7b equals 15 times 7. 105. So I'm going to rewrite the top equation right above it. And I will go ahead and decide if I'm going to add or subtract these equations. Now, to eliminate this variable, I will need to subtract. So I'm going to make sure to subtract each number. So that gives me 25 minus 7.
The answer is 18.
18b. 231 minus 105.
That would be 126.
Okay. And also remember that the variable v did cancel itself out when we subtracted it, so that would be essentially 0. But no need to write that. Now we can go ahead and solve for b. Dividing both sides by 18, that gives us b is equal to 126 divided by 18.
That would be 7.
7, meaning there are 7 buses. Now, if there are 7 buses, how many vans are there? Okay, we're going to go back to our equation here. You can use the top equation if you'd like, but I'm going to use the bottom equation since it's a bit easier to deal with. That gives me v plus b equals 15. Now, which letter did we just solve for? Let's substitute that into our equation. That gives us v plus 7 equals 15. Now, what number plus 7 equals 15? You can either guess or you can subtract. I'm going to subtract 7 and I'm going to get my answer of v equals 8. Now I'll double check my work because I don't want to make a mistake. Calculators don't really make mistakes sometimes. 15 minus 7.
That's what I figured.
Let's try it again. 15 minus 7.
It's 8.
Let's go. So we got the correct answer of 7 buses and 8 vans. Okay, let's now turn to standard 7b. 7b is dealing with congruence proofs and flowcharts. So remember, just to get a little bit of background, we have a few congruence proofs. The first one is SAS. Another one is side, side, side. Do you remember those 5 congruence theorems? There's HL, angle, side, angle, and also angle, angle, side. So for problem number 1, it asks us to draw a diagram based on the matching of this triangle congruence flowchart proof shown below. So the way that I'm going to proceed with doing this is I'm going to read the flowchart first and decide what kind of diagram I could draw. So right here it says angle CAB is congruent to angle EDB. Okay, that's good. We have congruent sides, we also have congruent angles, but this right here is a very key part. What do vertical angles look like? Right? Vertical angles means we're going to have angles that are vertical to each other or across from each other. So I know that my diagram needs to look like this. Okay, also I need to know that it does create angle side angle. Angle side angle is very important because if I don't have angle side angle, the diagram won't match the proof. So I'm going to try to add letters now based on what's given to me. So it does say ABC, DBE. I'll go ahead and write A, B, C. And I'll also write ABC, DBE. I'll also write those letters right there. So let's just double check. Let's make sure that these angles are vertical to each other. ABC is vertical to DBE. That's great. I could have probably switched those letters. That's fine if they're switched. But let's go ahead and label the rest of this now. AB and DB. AB is congruent to DB. So I'll put a check mark on that. I'll put a check mark on this. Now we also have angle CAB. CAB is this angle right here. And angle EDB. EDB is angle D right there. So let's put a check mark on that. Everything matches up. Now all we have to do is decide if this actually is angle side angle. So let's see what it spells. We have an angle, we have a side, we have an angle. Good. Let's check the second triangle. We have an angle, we have a side, and we have an angle. Good. So this diagram will match the description or flowchart proof shown here. Angle side angle does check out. Okay, next up is a proof that we need to construct ourselves based on the diagram. So remember that we have vertical angles. We also have other things that we can add to our diagram. We have shared side or reflexive property. These are the two most common properties for triangle congruence proofs. So we already took care of vertical angles, shown here. This one does not have vertical angles. It doesn't have the shape of an X, so it's not vertical, but we do have a shared side. So for shared side, I'm going to add, I like to add 2 tick marks. Just personally, I like to do that. We also have some angles that are congruent to each other. So we do have this angle congruent to that angle and this angle congruent to this angle, just based on the markings that are showing there. So according to this diagram, I will go ahead and label it as angle, side, angle for one triangle. And for the second triangle, I will label it also as angle, side, angle. So I know that my proof can be organized as also, just like the last one, I can also label this one angle, side, angle. Now all I need to do is construct my proof with some letters. So for the shared side, I'm going to say side SU. The shared side SU, just using the 2 letters shown there, is congruent to side SU. Why is it SU and SU and not SUUS? Look, SU is 1 tick mark, 2 tick marks. 1 tick mark, 2 tick marks. While the other triangle has 1 tick mark, 2 tick marks as SU. So SU congruent to SU is important. So shared side, or you can say reflexive property. Now we just have to label the angles. The angles that are given to us are angle. We got to use 3 letters for this. So I'm going to label it RSU is congruent to TSU. Angle TSU. That was given to us on the diagram. Okay, our last set of angles is the ones with 2 tick marks. So I'll just put 1 tick mark and 2 tick marks here to just show that I'm organized by tick marks. And it's going to be angle TUS is congruent to angle RUS. And that was also given to us on the diagram. Finally, I just need to name what my triangles are. You can name them in any order as long as it matches up with the other. So for sake of keeping things easy, I'm just going to use the same letter set that I used here. So it's going to be RSU, triangle RSU is congruent to triangle TSU. And that completes my flowchart proof. So that was standard 7B and 6C.